Welcome to Undressing Intimacy, where we cut through the bullshit
Greggy,
so we can get naked.
you can't say that.
Why not? How would you say it then?
Well, maybe more like, welcome to Undressing Intimacy, where we undress emotionally so we can undress physically.
That's exactly what I said. Not sure what the problem is. Welcome to episode number
21 and having fun.
There we go. All right, we had a blast last week, and hopefully you enjoyed talking to us and Dr. Jennifer Finlayson-Fife. We really did enjoy ourselves and thought there was tons that we got out of that one, so we're really excited. We're also very excited because we need you to stop what you're doing right this very moment and go sign up for our workshop. Now, I don't know, maybe we didn't explain it very well. This is not on Valentine's Day, so you can keep doing your Valentine's Day things if you want to. But what we'll have you do is meet with us for the next 3 Fridays for an hour and a half each for a workshop. And this workshop, we worked really, really hard to have hands-on things that you can apply to your marriage that very day.
Yes, and we want to be able to support you in a very real and legitimate way to help you see individually where you will be able to strengthen yourself, and also collectively as a couple, where you'll be able to strengthen yourselves as a couple together. So we'll be working on both sides of the relationship, both your individual relationship with self and also your relationship with your spouse. And also, of course, how to develop that direct desire and eroticism.
All right. I don't know what to say. What are you waiting for? Pause. Stop. Go sign up. We want you to be there. It's going to be really, 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 really awesome. So I know you guys are being silly. Stop and sign up.
Also, if you can't be there live, we will have the recordings. Like, say you can make it to 2 of the 3, or maybe you can't even make it to any of them. Still listening to the recordings and doing the work that we'll be doing there will still be helpful for you. So, and then remember, you get a free coaching session as a couple with it. So if you have questions and you can't attend live, you can always ask them in that coaching session.
What are you waiting for? Go do it. All right. It is a Valentine's Day weekend. The weekend that it's the week leading up to the weekend.
Yeah, it's the week.
The week leading up to the weekend. The weekend that we all either are very excited about or we might be deathly afraid.
Dreading.
Yes. So we wanted to take some time and maybe make this a little lighter podcast and tell you a few stories of our epic failures of Valentine's Day.
Total epic failures, like flopped to an nth degree failures.
Yeah, we got in such a pattern for Valentine's Day. We thought we might cancel Valentine's Day.
Yeah, it was so bad for so long.
So we're going to tell you a few of those and then talk to you about some of the lighter sides about an erotic, intimate relationship. And that really what we want to talk about is that it's not always awesome fireworks and, great shows and everything is just great. Sometimes it's great and sometimes it's okay. And sometimes we fail and sometimes we do a really good job at it. So let's keep it real here.
Okay. One of our very first failures, Greggy doesn't know I was going to do this. So
no, I just saw the book that she pulled. If you're not watching the videos, I know exactly where she's going. So she surprised me for this one, but yeah, it's a good one.
I like surprising him. Okay.
Let me just say this. I am a hopeless romantic. I always have been. I've always dreamed of being this great romantic lover that would sweep my sweet princess off her feet and carry her into the bedroom and make passionate love to her. And so from the very beginning of a relationship, I was always the romantic one, trying to find the most romantic things I could do to sweep Amy off her feet. And I had a perfect plan.
So his plan was to take me, we were just newly married, by the way, to Barnes & Noble.
She loves books.
I love books. I love Barnes & Noble. That was back too when they had a lot of really cozy chairs and more, it's okay now, but it was even better back then.
Back in our day, we didn't have Amazon, so we had to go to the bookstore.
Yes, now we get so many off Amazon. Okay, and his idea was to go find some really, just hot, sensual poetry and read it to me.
Yeah, this is probably scared Amy more than anything else. Thinking about that at the time. Now I'm thinking about it. Anyway,
And
I was going to find a good one and read it.
This really like passionate moment. So
stare her in the eyes. Read this. Really.
He finds. I'm going to show those who are watching YouTube this. It's called The Random House Treasury of Favorite Love Poems.
Oh, and it's going to be favorite love poems.
It's bright red with gold letters.
It's got to be good.
He pulls it off the shelf and he just randomly opens it and he's like, babe.
I'll read you a poem.
That's right. And he gets down on one knee. And this is the poem that he read.
Sexy as hell. Get ready.
All right. It's called Love.
Love.
There's the wonderful love of a beautiful maid, and the love of a staunch, true man, and the love of a baby that's unafraid. All have existed since time began. But the most wonderful love, the love of all loves, even greater than the love for mother, is the infinite, tenderest, passionate love of one dead drunk for another.
We laughed and laughed. I think I was rolling on the floor of the bookstore. People were looking at me. There was something wrong. I had the best ever poem for Amy, and it was sexy as hell, as you can see.
And we don't even drink, so that was even funnier. Yeah, so that last line, here he's thinking it's going to be this
I thought she was going to melt into my
ultimate
arms.
moment, and then he read it just like that. Of one dead drunk for another.
Later on, we had friends that told us that a good night in bed was a 2 Miller Lite night. And so we never tried that out. But so maybe it is one dead drunk to another. That's the hottest one. I don't know. Can't tell you. I've never been there. But yes, epic fell number 1. I didn't even think about that.
And we just laughed. And I think this is part of what intimacy is, right? You're going to bonk each other in the nose. You're going to suggest something. And we've been in different role plays or something. And then all of a sudden one of us will say something and it's like, no, not that.
Turned me off. Huh?
Anything but that. Like, whoa, you turn. We were also with our chiropractor,
a couple weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, and love this guy, and he found out about our podcast, so we're telling him about it. It's called.
So he's your listening chiropractor. Hi.
Yes. And we were telling him, it's called Undressing Intimacy, and we work with couples to build intimacy. And he's like, oh, well, every Monday I have couples that come in and they're injured. And he's like, and then I have to hear all about how they got injured over the weekend.
You won't believe the details they give me of what they were doing when they got injured. So.
Their wild, passionate intimacy. And so he's like, I can come on your podcast and tell you what not to do.
Yeah. So if we want a really hot, sexy one, we'll give you the how to stretch before you try crazy positions podcast.
Anyways, we just wanted to keep it a little bit more real today because let me just say this real quick. So often we find that when you set an expectations are really pass fail, and most of the time they fail. And so really just having this expectation sets you and your spouse up for failure. And so instead of expectations, we like to think of it more about just having values or desires. For example, the difference between I'm going to do this, this, and this with my spouse and it's going to be amazing, or the desire like I want to connect with them and I'm going to keep connecting with them, whether we
looks like A or looks like B.
Looks like A or looks like B, whether we go this way or that way, whether it leads to hot, passionate sex, whether it leads to cuddling, whether it leads to a deep conversation, and really just being fluid in that desire so that you can stay on the journey together. Right. And that tends to lead to more intimacy. And, sometimes our bodies don't work
like we think it should, or, like it did last time.
Or you had this amazing experience and then you expect to recreate it the next time and it just totally flops. And we just want to say, yes, this is for life.
Right. Okay. Epic failure number 2. So this is when I was trying to be a really good boy. And instead of trying to sweep Amy off her feet and get laid on Valentine's Day, I decided that
I don't suggest that as a plan, by the way.
You don't want me to sweep off your feet and get laid?
No, I mean that expectation.
Oh, putting an expectation on it. Yes,
Yes.
we just talked about that. Don't do that expectation. But I thought I was going to be a really good boy, and I was going to include the family in this wonderful, great outing. And we were all huge Jimmer Fredette. He's a basketball player for BYU. We were huge fans. My family never got into sports, as we talked about before, but our kids watched every basketball game that year, the senior year that Jimmer Fredette was made MVP. And we had Fredette t-shirts, and we were ginormous fans. So guess what? Jimmer Fredette was coming to Dallas.
On Valentine's
Day.
Yep.
He was coming to Dallas to play the Mavericks. I think he was the king on the Kings at one time. He didn't spend a lot of time in the NBA, unfortunately. Did huge out in the Chinese league, but didn't really make it big in the NBA. But he was coming, and we were going to be able to talk to him for a second, and we were so excited. So I'm like, babe, do I have the Valentine's Day?
We even let the kids not go to school the next day
because it was going to be literally late at night. Yeah.
This was a school night, and we were going out, and we were going to see Jimmer, and it was Valentine's, and it was just it was just
it was a big deal. And Amy ate it all up. Look at here's this great dad that's taking care of his kids, and we're gonna have this great family outing. So we went to the game and we watched. Jimmer didn't play a lot, but we got to talk to him for a little bit, and we had to stay afterwards after the game so that he could come out and he could talk to the BYU fans who were there that wanted to talk to Jimmer, and we answer some questions. So we did all that, and we had fun, and it was great to be with the family. And we went and left the stadium. All of a sudden, we turned around,
and the doors lock after you leave.
All the doors are behind us locked. But my son's diabetic supplies are sitting on the bench somewhere in the stadium. And
life sustaining supplies.
Yes, cannot do without these. And so we're freaking out. Like, what are we going to do? So I go running around the whole stadium. I got to get in.
Nobody is letting us in, by the way.
They're not letting us in. And kids are getting
everyone
later.
had left because we'd stayed so much later.
Yeah, we were later listening to Jim.
So most of the fans were gone, and there was nobody really in the lobbies behind the doors. It was pretty empty by then.
We were just dying at that time. So finally we found a door with someone nice enough to let us back in. Mm-hmm. And we scurried as fast as we could down to the seats we were sitting at when Jimmer was addressing us. And sure enough, his diabetic supplies were sitting right there. So,
crisis averted. First crisis.
But it was late.
Averted.
It was getting late. So we're thinking, okay, this isn't bad. We get out, we get in the car, and we're driving home. Well, I've driven that road 1.5 million times. And for some reason on the way home, they were doing construction at one of the interchanges on the freeways, and it got us off on the wrong interchange. I thought, I'm so tired and I want to get home. I knew I wasn't getting late, so that didn't matter.
By now, right?
It's getting late, maybe
midnight
even later.
1. Yeah,
and so late. I'm coming around to get back on the freeway, and all of a sudden, the car stops running.
Yep, dies.
And I look down.
Let me give a little background here.
Let's not give him a little more background. We should keep talking. Background. No, they don't care about that background.
Yes. So for some reason, my Honda Odyssey van that I used to have, I don't have it anymore. For some reason, I could never pay attention to the gas light or the gas tachometer. Is that what it's called? The gas fuel gauge. That's what it's called.
If you want to call it that, that's great.
The fuel gauge. I don't know why.
I'll tell you why. And you don't believe me. Everyone doesn't believe me this. But when I put the tilt wheel down in this Odyssey van, the wheel covered up the exact spot where the gas gauge and the light were at. And so I could be driving along, cruising, and I would never see the gas light come on.
So we probably ran out of gas Now, let me just
More
say,
than any other car in my life, I ran out of gas.
This isn't normal in other cars, so I'm going to give you that.
It's just that car.
It was only that car.
I told you why.
And we ran out of gas in the middle of the night on this lonely, dark freeway road.
Well, and then this
is where it gets really crazy. So we have our kids with us. We're in the van. We're on the side of the road, and it is, do you want to tell?
It's dark, and we're close to the DFW airport at the time, but we're off on a side road. And I just realized that I'm going to need to go get gas, and I'm going to have to walk. But the scary part about this thing is earlier that week, there had been a criminal that was being transported from somewhere in Texas, and I think they were going somewhere else across the United States. and they landed in DFW to transfer. And this transport, this criminal, that was arrested, was causing all these problems and commotions. And so the police officers decided to, hey, we think this is too dangerous to stay on the plane. We are going to ask for an escort to get us there by car. And so they went and got a rental car. But the rules around that was, if you're going to be driving a prisoner, you now need an extra officer, and they didn't have enough officers. So they were having to wait for an officer to come, and they were sitting in the Walmart parking lot. And one of the officers said, I'm going to go in real quick and get something from Walmart. I'll be right back. Well, this prisoner figured out a way to take some of his glasses or something and unlock his handcuffs. And so in the middle of this, he got out of his handcuffs, stabbed the other officer, and escaped and ran away.
And he'd been loose for a day or so.
A few days now. So he was loose right in this area, like DFW Airport.
Where we ran out of gas in the middle of the night, in the dark, with no lights.
So I'm realizing that I'm going to get out of the car and have to go. And I said, Amy, you want my gun? She's like, I will never fire that thing. And I'm like, well, lock the doors and hope that the inmate that's running around doesn't come and get you.
And we knew he was still in the area because he was taking things from different homes. And
they're finding
vandalizing
things where he was at, but they just hadn't found him yet. So here we go. I'm hiking off to get the gas. I walk all this way. I get the gas. I come back. My family's alive. They hadn't been murdered yet, so that was a good thing.
We were freezing cold.
It was cold. I put the gas in the tank. The car won't start. We've called a tow truck. It's going to be anyway. Long story short, it took a very long time.
I think it was like 4 a.m.
It was like 3 or 4 a.m. by the time didn't have enough gas in it to get it started, and
the battery died from sitting there.
I don't know, whatever. It just was bad.
It was one thing after another thing after another thing.
So that was an absolute.
Our cell phones died. The car battery died. It ran out of gas. It was cold. It was the middle of the night. The convict was out.
There was a murderer on the loose.
And so that was our Valentine's Day.
So I should have just tried to woo Amy and get laid that night. Even if that was disastrous, it's probably better than that. But anyway, that was an epic fail.
And another Valentine's Day, we decided we were going to treat ourselves, and we were going to go buy a new bed frame because ours was super old, and we like painted it, and we're like, we deserve a good bed frame.
And how sexy is a new bed? I mean, that's
right.
awesome.
A new bed for Valentine's. We're like, yeah,
we're
perfect.
Break this thing in.
So we go, we pick out the frame, and we're super excited. And we know we're not sure that it's going to fit because I think we had a California king, and it was a king.
Yeah, the guy that sold it to us like, oh, it's not a problem. You'll be able to make it work. We had a California king, and it was really a bed frame made for
a king, and it was this big, beautiful,
headboard,
footboard, sideboards. It's beautiful. And we are trying to get this thing together.
So it shows up on Valentine's Day.
Yes.
And
we're super excited. We're like, perfect. This is going to be a great Valentine's, yada, yada, yada. We're trying to get it together. And it just, we can't get it like logistically to fit. And the mattress slips and scratches it like all the way down the back. And now we're like,
we own it now.
We can't return it. Now we got to figure out how to make it work because we just totally gouged.
Here I'm thinking that we're going to put this thing together. We're going to have a hot night on this new bed. No, didn't happen.
No,
because I was cussing and mad, and Amy's like, calm down. I'm like, no.
There were some tempers, and there was some tense moments, and there was a lot of stress, and then there was trying to get this thing. Now we owned this bed frame, and we had to make it work because we had just gouged it.
Right. And by the way, this was back to back.
I
can't remember which one came first and which came second. I think the basketball one came first, and the next year was the bed one, and they were back to back. So it was literally, I'm like, I'm canceling Valentine's Day. I am never celebrating it because I almost got my family murdered, and then I ruined the bed. Like, what else could we do? So I remember I was frantically looking for a new mattress. Remember, I was calling around, everyone was closed, and finally I rigged it up with some bolts and something so it'd work. But I don't think I did that till the next day. So we like slept on the floor.
We slept on the floor.
Really, really romantic.
It did not go.
I got nothing that night. But glares.
You did not get glares. It did not go at all as
seared in
planned.
my mind. Nothing went as planned. And as we're saying, this is life, right? This is life. And this is what's great about marriage. You're living in the trenches with someone else. And sometimes there's valleys and sometimes there's peaks, and sometimes we celebrate and have amazing, wonderful sex, and sometimes it doesn't work at all.
And sometimes, things, again, bodies sometimes respond the way they should and sometimes don't. And sometimes, you think something's going to work and it totally doesn't, even if it worked last time or what have you. And so just the flexibility to not make it mean that you don't love each other, to not make it mean that you're broken, to not make it mean that your intimacy is broken, really the flexibility to stay collaborative, to stay in the moment, to stay connected. I really think that is foundational to intimacy.
Absolutely. We have good friends that say, make love to me on the weekdays and blow my mind on the weekends. And again, we're not trying to set expectations that every weekend is going to be a mind-blowing one. But what they're trying to say is like, hey, sometimes it's just quickies here, enjoy each other there during the week when we don't have time. And when we have time to do more of those elaborate things and spend some more time with each other, then we can put time in to do that. And why even some of those times where we've had more time, it hasn't gone exactly as a plan. And I think I've talked about this before. As high desire people, we think about this all the time. So we have all the plans in the world about how this is going to go and what it's going to look like. And even then, it doesn't go that way. But I find myself when I don't put that expectation on what it's going to look like or the outcome is going to have to be, is when it's most enjoyable. I got a lot better at this. I was really bad, especially as Amy and I would go away on getaways. I always like, okay, well, man, I'm really getting laid this time, right? And I had thought about all this stuff. It's going to be good. And even the expectation of Amy knowing that, biggest turn off in the whole entire world.
That pressure, that expectation really is so anti-erotic.
Right. And the best thing I've found is getting the hell out of the way most of the time.
I think it's more like a surrender, right? Like we're just going to surrender all the expectations and be more just present in what is and how things are going. And I think often neither one of us has really any idea, a clear notion of how things will work out. You're making a funny face.
I always have hopes.
Yes, I know you have hopes, but I mean, it's more like we're along for the journey.
Yeah, I think that's more like it because I've learned to do more things like you love. Like we'll go and when we're getting away to the hotel room and we'll sit and read books, and that's not my thing, right? But Amy loves it, and so we lay in bed and read books, and I think that's just part of her thing that she loves, and I've learned to enjoy it now too because it's something that she loves. Going out and getting something to eat.
It's really sexy when he's reading a book.
I found that out. That's maybe why I like it. Not because I like to read, but it turns her on. But I've learned that if I don't try to plan or put an expectation on what that looks like and allow it to happen, the co-creation of that is way better. Way better. And I've said this before, like when we talked about building playgrounds, if I would just gotten out of the way of Amy and let her help me build this playground instead of having this imaginary thing in my mind of how great it was going to be, it would have been so much better years ago, because when that happens and there's a co-creation of it and you're actually in the midst of making love together, creating it, that's when your mind gets blown. Mm-hmm. When what you're doing is actually having the reaction, and when she's getting turned on and enjoying
it's
that
the
kind
presence.
Of stuff, yeah, that's the great side. It's not the act itself. Even having my own orgasm isn't the greatest part. Amy doesn't believe this still, I don't think, this day.
I do believe you.
It's taken a long time to try to convince her. Like, I enjoy watching her get turned on more than anything in the world. And so when it's pressured and she can't do that, that's, especially for a woman's body, just like getting turned on doesn't happen, right? Mm-hmm. But when I can get out of the way and allow that to happen,
can you share with them how you've learned to kind of calm down and breathe in that almost like anxiousness or expectation? Like I've seen you and watched you learn to just be able to calm and center yourself so you don't get too carried away.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about a lot of things that I've learned over the period of this time, right? We talked about like how men come aroused. That's the first thing that happens. They have a desire and arousal before they even get started. And it takes women a time to actually go through that to get to that.
And for women, desire, or for, I should say, responsive. Let me back up here a little. For spontaneous, desire is present first, and it quickly leads to arousal. It's a very fast.
It's like almost instantaneously.
Right. They come so closely together. For the responsive desire, it takes time to get aroused, and then that arousal leads to desire. Right. And so the desire isn't present at first, but that doesn't mean that it won't be or that it can't be.
Yeah. And so learning that because when I start, I could be on the top of a 10 staircase. We talked about this before too. And I'm ready to run into that playground and play because I've been thinking about it all the time. I'm aroused. I'm ready to go. Amy could be on step number 1. I'm not even in the building sometimes. Right? And
not in the
and
building.
It's not,
thanks, babe.
but it's not, I'm not blaming her. It's just how that works. Right. Because it's not something that she spontaneously thinks about. It's not something that she goes out there all day and thinks about all these arousal things. It takes to be in that moment. It takes her some time to be in that moment with me to then get aroused. And learning that and knowing that it didn't mean something about me. Again, we go back to the validation part of it. Like it didn't mean, oh, she's not attracted to me. Because if she was, then it would look like this, because that's all the reference you have is what it looks like for yourself. And so you get that in your mind. You're like, oh, she's not attracted to me. She doesn't love me. Getting rid of all of that really helped. And then realizing that, hey, if I'm on the top of the steps and I'm already worked up a sweat and I'm ready to rock and roll and she's not even up the stairs, if I keep going, like this isn't going to work out well. Mm-hmm. And so
that's where I've learned to like digest and metabolize that a little bit. Yeah. Tell us how you do that.
To me, it's just realizing that and stop. And it's almost a breathing exercise of thinking, all that arousal that you had, just not letting it, they talk about with men, usually the arousal happens, the orgasm happens when they get tensed and they focus the energy in a certain place, and this tension, it comes as a reaction, right? So it's a reflex is what they're calling them,
right?
Yeah,
so arousal is a reflex that leads to
arousal is a buildup that leads up to a reflex, which is orgasm.
Yes.
Right? So you can't call it orgasm out of thin air.
It's a threshold that you reach.
Yes, you have to come to a point.
That's the word we're looking for.
A reflex or a threshold that comes up.
So like a sneeze, you reach a certain threshold, right, and your body responds. Your body responds in a sneeze. It's the same with arousal. You reach a certain threshold of arousal, especially for men with high desire, spontaneous desire, and it leads to orgasm.
Yeah. And you can feel it. If you're a man and you're just for funsies next time, when you're getting back to that point, stop and think about it. I listened to a podcast recently on my flight back from the UK of a gal that was talking about this. And she talked about body scans. And what she meant by body scans was to see where the tension was in your body. And she said, start at the head or start at the feet. It doesn't matter. It will usually be right in the center when you get there. And that's where all the tension will be. You're clenching your butt cheeks or whatever you're doing. That's where you'll usually find it. But you'll find that tension. And that tension is that buildup of arousal. And you're ready just to release through an orgasm. Mm-hmm. And so I've really learned how to find that in my body and relax and just allow it to happen. We probably need to do a whole podcast about this, about premature ejaculation too, but this is what causes premature ejaculation, right? It's most men are physically capable of not premature ejaculating. Some extreme cases it's not, right? And there's other things you can do, but most of us are. But the thing is, we allow that tension to build and build and build and build to a point where that reflex is going to happen and we don't really realize it. And so it's really scanning your body from the top and work your way down until you find the tension. And then when you find the tension, relax and breathe. And you can even do an exercise she talked about where you tense yourself up in that area really hard and then release, because the body and muscles work that way, right? If you push them against one way and then release, they go, oh, you're giving me what I want, this tension. Now I'm going to back off. Mm-hmm. And so I think Amy's even I listened to that podcast and really didn't tell you about it. And she's like, what did you just do? And it's like, she asked me, she's like, what did you do? And I told her what I was doing. I'm like, yeah. She's like, I noticed, like all of a sudden you relax, and we continued on and enjoyed ourselves. Yeah. And it really allowed us to get to a place where we both, because what we want to do is we both want to get there. Right.
We want to be on the journey together.
Already on the top step, or I'm already on number 10 and number 11's orgasm, and I'm on number 10 and Amy's on number 1. If we start getting her to number 2 and 3 and I'm on number 10, there's no way I'm going to get her to number 10 before I'm just going to explode. So
right. It's like living in that orgasmic threshold without orgasming. And actually our next podcast,
very exciting to announce.
We're very excited to announce, is going to be with Tammy Hill, and we're going to talk more about how to stay in this orgasmic threshold without reaching that reflex, and how to slow things down, and how to explore different styles of sexual intercourse, I think you're really going to enjoy that. But
it's fascinating.
Thinking of that, I also think sometimes we have too narrow of a definition of what sexual intimacy is.
Right. We talk about in the next podcast, right? Western is like, bam, 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 thank you, ma'am, orgasm. And that's
And it's all about releasing that sexual and erotic energy instead of being able to allow it to be in you and stir within you and being able to access it and be comfortable in it, right? Like not having to get rid of it, but actually being able to be in it.
Yeah, I think as high desire men, or high desire people, we fear it a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. Because we've been taught in culture that it's dangerous. That's what we've been taught first, is that our sexuality is dangerous. And so we fear it. And so it's almost like we want to rush through it to get to the end, because then we didn't hurt anybody on the way.
Right. And I think from the lower or responsive desire, because it's not an area that spontaneously comes to us, we have to learn how to be comfortable in it too. Mm-hmm. And how to stay in it, how to access it, not only in sexual ways, but just in other ways in our life too. Like how to recognize our desires, how to make sure that we're cultivating that feeling of aliveness, of connectedness, of replenishing. And so even for the lower desire, it's very, very useful to be able to get comfortable.
Yeah. And I think that's the interesting thing too, that I found out, and it makes a lot of sense now, right? Is because you learn how to have to take all that energy and focus it and push it to the single place.
Yes.
Send it down to where you want to send to it and mm-hmm. focus in it. Mm-hmm. And
because we don't spend as much time in it, where you've had many times, you've been in this energy for a while when you come to an interaction, where I enter into it after being aroused. And so it's a different process.
Right. It's almost the exact opposite process of what I'm doing, which makes a lot of sense. Right. And then as we talked about being a threshold reflex, the other thing is if you are tense, like if you're trying to hold back that sneeze, you're holding it back and you can actually stop yourself from sneezing. It's not very comfortable and it hurts. And that's the same with orgasm, right? So focusing it and building it, but if you do not relax into it, you can't let that reflex happen, and it never will. And
I think this brings up the point of edging, which I don't think we talk about enough. That so many of our responsive desire, the process of that arousal and being in that orgasmic threshold is really about, it's not a straight line from arousal and desire to that threshold. It's very much hills and valleys. So like bringing yourself up, allowing yourself to feel that energy and get aroused, and then coming back down, and then bringing yourself back up. And the next time it's a little bit higher and a little bit more intense, and then backing off, right? Yeah. Allowing that edging where you allow it to slowly build and then back off. And then the next time you build is a little bit more and then back off. And I think so many responsive desire are afraid to back off.
Yes. And there are two reasons why, right? So I think we're afraid to back off because one, we're so far down that it's too late. We're past that threshold, right? When we built up that. So I think that's one thing. But the second thing is from your side of the park, I think we're worried that we may never get back there, right?
Right.
And again, that goes back to the expectation. If the expectation is that orgasm has to happen for us to be successful, then that's going to cause that anxiety to come out. And again, we won't ruin next week's podcast, but we talk a lot about this next week with Tammy, and she explains why that's the case. But it's really,
it just creates so much pressure
journey.
And
like,
performance.
There's so much fun in the journey of getting there. And if we just rush through it, it's done. And that's not any fun.
Yeah. I mean, there are times for quickies, right? And I think that's, again, there are time for longer, more slow burning sessions. There are times for quickies. And it's really going to depend on your stage of life and what's happening that day or that week. I remember when our kids were little and they were always running down the hall, jumping in our bedroom. And so there would be times when we're like, oh man,
we had plans tonight.
And now there's a child in our bed that we can't get out. And so
let's hope it's not like our friends. The child was hiding under the bed.
Oh yeah.
Anyway.
They went in to take a shower. Their child came in, hid under the bed while they were in the shower. They came out and were starting a passionate session, and their child popped out from under the bed.
So, a heart attack.
Yes. Lock your doors. Anyways.
Sometimes wives, get up and lock the door for your husband. Don't always make him do it. Amy tortures me this whole time. She knows I want her so bad. And she goes, nope, I'm not getting out of bed. And it's freezing cold. And I'm just all cozy. And she's like, nope, not getting out of bed. I'm like, come on, if you love me, just once walk to the door and lock it.
If you love me.
But she refuses to lock the door.
Who's putting it on thick today?
She knows she can get away with it.
I think the other thing I was going to say is we're talking about ebbing and flowing. We're talking about being flexible. And I think that's also true of just affection in general. What I really love now that wasn't before. Oh, and you know what? I'm going to mention a study about this because I thought it was super fascinating. Dr. Gottman was talking about a worldwide study. They interviewed couples who felt that they were having very passionate, connected, intimate sex, and they were trying to figure out, you know, what were the components that were creating this for them. And the components were emotional intimacy and the ability to be physically affectionate without pressure. Mm-hmm. And so I thought of it in our relationship before when we didn't have those components, and say in the morning you reached over to cuddle me and grabbed me. It meant obligation. It meant pressure. It meant like I had to pull away. It meant pushing you away. And now we love our morning cuddle sessions. There's no attachment to performance or pressure or expectation. We love holding each other, kissing, or, you know, smacking booties or whatever that looks like throughout the day. And it really is unattached to
the sex act itself.
Yeah. It's just that expression between us is allowed to freely flow. And I know that if we have, say a connecting moment in the kitchen, it's not like, oh, now I'm obligated.
Right. And the doctor was shocked because he thought it's going to be like they have the greatest positions or they're the most fit and, you know, they can stay erect the longest and all the things that everyone thinks about making great, passionate love what it was. And the study had nothing to do with it. It was how much time can you spend with each other? How much affection can you show for each other outside the bedroom that allowed them
and
to have
how emotionally safe
love.
Do you feel with each other? And so, again, if you are wanting to create intimacy, it really is about allowing things to be and working through whatever is, right? Whether your bodies are working or not, whether you're just elbowed your spouse in the eye, whether, the thing is.
She had something with the eye. We were going down the roller coaster one time right. And she went, woohoo. If you can't see my hands because I'm watching, she put her hands up and stuck her finger in my eye. And the pressure of the roller coaster going down the hill, she could not get it out.
I couldn't pull it out.
And she's like, my finger's stuck. I'm like, yeah, I know. It's in my eyeball.
It was so gross. And I was
gross. It hurt.
I was trying so hard to pull it out, but the centrifugal force wouldn't allow me. And it was like the most disgusting thing. And
PTSD about roller coasters. I cover my eyes.
I love roller coasters. He's not a fan so much.
No, not so much.
But I don't love fingers and eyes on roller coasters. So again, allowing life to be life. Sometimes you think you're going to have this really passionate, intimate, poetry reading, and it's the love of one dead drunk to another. Mm. And sometimes you're looking so forward to time together and your child runs in. And sometimes, these things just happen. Sometimes you want a nice hot date and you get stuck out of gas with the convict.
Yeah, scary. And I'm just thinking this because we spend a lot of time talking about marriage, talking about relationships.
Yeah.
And man, we just still screw it up.
Yep, we do.
Last week I had a major F up and I was trying to be so open and vulnerable and it just fell flat on its face. And I'll be honest with you, babe. It's the first time I've felt that withdrawal from you in a very, very long time. Because we've been really quick to be able to get back there, but it didn't happen quickly. It took us a good day or so. I mean, that's a lot quicker than I guess it used to, but we haven't gone a day or so with you just feeling totally detached from me.
Yeah, in a long time.
So
yeah,
it happens. That's what marriage is all about. And we spend a lot of time talking about this stuff and I'm supposed to really understand what we're talking about, but it's just the way marriage happens.
I think what allows us to work through that though is that we now know fundamentally that you care for me and I care for you.
Yeah, we're not trying to answer that question over and over again, are we?
And we're flawed and we're human and we do dumb, stupid things sometimes. And even in our dumb stupidness, we still know I love you and care for you and want you, and you love me and care for me and want me.
Yep.
And then sometimes we're just
messed up.
dumb.
Or messy. Dumb. Me especially. So
No, it's
I married
mutual.
a smart woman, let me tell you. Me not so much. But anyway, I just hope that this allows you to relax a little bit. Enjoy this Valentine's Day.
Enjoy what is, whatever that is.
Don't set expectations of what it's going to look like. And I promise you it will be fabulous, whatever it might be. Because if you really go into it caring about each other and wanting to spend time with each other, even if you're getting chased by a convict, you'll end up loving each other.
Please don't get chased by any convicts. I
Fill
don't
your gas
recommend
tank
that.
up.
That's right. Fill your gas tank up.
If you drive
Measure
a
your
Honda
bed.
Odyssey, make sure your steering wheel does not cover your gas tachometer.
No, don't call it that. Okay, listen, I literally know nothing about cars.
Hey, you know more. We've been teaching you a little
It's
bit.
true. My son's been here and I've been learning a lot about turbos and oil lines and torque and
Babe, tell us all about torque.
no, not now.
Yeah, we're going to have an auto shop podcast later. Amy explains the gas engine. It will be great.
Spark plugs.
It would be great. All right, everyone. We really, really, really appreciate y'all. We love doing this podcast. If it's only helping one person, it's worth it. But we're seeing it get out and grow and help more and more and more. So please
Share with your friends.
Share.
Send us and I got asked this the other day. If you have a question, we're talking about something and you're like, what about, or I don't understand, or could you explain this more? Just email us and ask us. We're totally happy to clarify, to further discuss, to give more examples.
It's real easy. Greg at langfordlifecoaching.com or
Amy at langfordlifecoaching.com.
can't go wrong. And of course, I spell my name right with one G, not two. Sorry, all the Gregagas out there.
Greg, that's right.
The Gregagas.
Gregaga. We actually know a couple Gregagas.
Yeah, I'm like, well, whatever. But yeah, like it, subscribe, send us questions, interact with it. We love it. And go visit our website, please.
And please have a blessed, happy Valentine's
And sign
Day.
up for the Valentine's Day workshop. That's the best gift you could ever give your spouse. 3 weeks in a row. Stop now. Go do it. Why would you not? I don't understand.
Babe.
Am I putting pressure?
Yes, you are.
I'm sorry. If you would desire to take the next step and think about coming up the stairs with me to the workshop, that would be great. How's that? Better?
That was a little creepy, but okay.
Oh, sorry. If I creeped you out, ignore that and go sign up for our workshop.
Have a blessed day.
Until next time,
Keep undressing.
your intimacy. Bye-bye.